Gazans are risking everything to speak out. The Center for Peace Communications has released this powerful new video of ordinary Palestinians in the Gaza Strip calling for a future that's free from fear, corruption, and terror under Hamas. Take a look.
كنا نمر بتعذيب لفترات طويلة من الشبح والتعذيب والإهانة. يريدون إخماد صوتنا بأي طريقة كانت. برا 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 حماس كلها تطلع برا.
أخو شاب معارض لحكم حماس وهو اللي نظم حراك بدنا نعيش.
أحد منظمي حراك بدنا نعيش ومؤسس الشباب الفلسطيني للتنمية. قامت حماس باعتقالي لأكثر من 20 مرة.
تعرضت كثير لاعتقال السياسي من قبل حكومة الأمر الواقع في قطاع غزة.
يوم حراك بدنا نعيش اعتقلوني وعذبوني علشان أعترف على مكانه، ولكن أنا ما كنتش بعرف مكانه. وفي آخر فترة استشرست حماس وهم بيعتقلوا الناس في المستشفيات وبكسروا الناس في المستشفيات، يعني
حيث الباص والشبح والتعذيب والشبح المتواصل طيلة اليوم. كانت تقول لنا أنتم لستم بشر، أنتم هنا أرقام فقط.
فوق المنطق.
بعد فترة من الآن بعد انهيار المنظومة الأمنية في قطاع غزة أصبح هناك عبارة من الأشخاص المترتبين في داخل حركة حماس لقوة حماس الأمنية أصبحوا قاطعين طرق لهذه المساعدات.
احنا نحمل حماس المسؤولية أولا وآخرا عن هذا الوضع القائم من 7 أكتوبر وتاع جاي. احنا اللي صار فينا ما حصل للبشرية كلها من قتل ودمار وهلاك، ونتمنى مزيدا من المساعدات ولكن بشرط ألا تصل ليد حماس. إذا وصلت ليد حماس ما حدا حياكل.
احنا هون في المخيم ما بخشش علينا شيء. خيام اجت لنا المخيم توزعت للي بدهم اياه، وانا في 7 انفار في نص خيمه. بكره لو اجى الشتاء راح اغرق.
الشادر تبع الخيمه هذا شادر معروف لكل العالم، شادر اليونيسيف. هذا بيجي مساعدات دوليه من برا إلنا. اشتريته شريه، اشتريت مترو ب50 شيكل، هو بيجينا مجانا.
هاي حماس ايش عملت لنا؟ قعدتنا في الخيام. طبعا حماس مش حاسين فينا، كروشهم هالقدي مطلس في الدول العربيه قاعدين ولا واحد حس فينا.
تتفاجأ اذا انت مش ابن حماس ما لكش حق في الحياه ولا لك حق في اي مساعده انسانيه.
غباء الحركه الغبيه اللي عملتها حماس يوم 7 اكتوبر والمقاومه غير محسوبه النتائج، يجب على كل شريف وعلى كل انسان وطني وعنده ذروة أخلاق وطنية أنه يدين هذا العمل القبيح والعمل المجرم الذي قامت به حماس.
ولا في عمار ولا في نيلة. بتمنى يمتمسوا حماس من البلد ورحمنا من تعين حماس. الله يعدمنا إياهم في الدنيا وفي الآخرة.
الطوفان علينا إيش الناس استفادت؟ ولا استفدنا حاجة، بس تخربط ديارنا، واللي صايب الصايب، واللي استشهد استشهد، واللي اتدمر اتدمر.
احنا هيك حماس بتعاملنا واحنا مسلمين فلسطينيين، فكيف بدها تعامل مخطوفين الاسرائيليين؟ واحنا بنناشد العالم كله بتخليصنا من حماس، لانه احنا بدنا نعيش بسلام مع الاسرائيليين.
أريد أن أقول شيء، أننا لا نريد أن نرى حكم حماس يعود إلينا من جديد.
All right, well, joining us now is Joseph Braude. He is the president of the Center for Peace Communications. You have just released this powerful video of Gazans speaking out against Hamas. How were these testimonies gathered, and what kind of risks did these individuals take to share their voices? I mean, we don't often see Gazans willing to speak in front of the camera like we did see so plainly here.
Our organization maintains a ground-level presence inside Gaza for years now, since well before October 7th. We built bonds of trust with hardened anti-Hamas activists, including those who took to the streets in over 1,000 in number to protest Hamas as early as 2019. And these are brave people who are speaking out for a much larger number of Gazans who don't want Hamas ever to return as a governing actor in the Strip, and feel that they have no choice at this point but to face the camera and ask the world to listen to them.
What risks are they potentially now facing in doing so? And what does this tell us about the internal reality in the Gaza Strip?
We've seen, and you've covered, incidents in which Hamas has gone after abducted, tortured, broken the legs of, and at times killed dissidents who represent the so-called We Want to Live movement, who have organized street demonstrations over the past few months. They feel threatened by any alternative voice that raises its head in the Strip. It is the true threat to Hamas's survival, political alternatives to its iron rule. And so what this says is that people are standing up with increasing courage and boldness. And this is boldness that arises from despair. They feel that the world is conflating Hamas with Gazans generally, and is somehow whitewashing or erasing the commanding role that Hamas has played in driving this conflict and its perpetuation. And so they want to challenge that narrative.
Joseph, would you say that this is reflective of the masses in Gaza? I mean, the most recent polls that we know that came out of the Gaza Strip back in May suggested that 38% of the Gazan public still supports what took place on October 7th. And of course, we know that it is because of Hamas's attack on October 7th that we are now seeing this mass devastation following Israel's response.
Well, even the poll you cited, which means at the same time that 62% are in opposition to Hamas, we believe is, as is often the case in environments where people are ruled by a terror militia, undercounts the massive opposition to Hamas today. Now, I would caution you that to be anti-Hamas is not the same as to be pro-Israel, and to the contrary, the majority, the prevailing, overwhelming view in Gaza today is both anti-Israel and anti-Hamas. There is a minority, and you've seen a moment from reflecting it in the video, that wants and stands up for the principle of coexistence. They believe the best way forward for the future of Gaza is partnership with Israel and all its allies to rebuild the Strip. But they are joined by a substantial minority when the question comes to the binary question of whether Hamas should ever be allowed to rule again. And that number is vast in Gaza. And what you've just seen reflects that prevailing view.
We have our senior Middle East correspondent, Ariel Oseran, here with us. Now, we were discussing this video earlier, Ariel, and I know that you had a question that you had wanted to ask Joseph about this.
Yeah, Joseph, first, good to see you, and very important to bring these voices. I know personally that some of them are being hunted down by Hamas, and they go to extreme personal risk to voice their position to the world. So thank you for bringing these important voices. You at the Center for Peace Communications, you drew up a plan of the so-called safe zones that would show the prospect of the IDF kind of cleaning out areas from Hamas and then providing safety for Gazans for self-rule in specific pockets. Now, is this a scenario that is viable if Israel moves forward with the plan to conquer, to fully occupy Gaza? Is this something that could potentially lay the groundwork for a plan such as these safe zones that you've drawn up in the past?
And just to add to that, what are you hearing from Gazans on the ground that you're in contact with in regards to these alleged plans to occupy the Gaza Strip?
So actually, your two questions are nicely related. To clarify what we did, we have given voice to Gazan aspirations to establish enclaves of self-rule, to pilot civil administration in discrete areas where they would have an opportunity to secure them internally, while Israeli and perhaps other forces defend them externally from Hamas, rocket, and other threats, which they're not yet in a position to respond to themselves. So since we enabled Gazans to give testimony proposing such ideas in the parliaments of Germany, Spain, Italy, Canada, and the US Congress, we've seen the beginnings of those enclaves form. Some have been reported on. We've enabled those people to speak out, and others are yet to emerge publicly. And the idea, I think, is that once you have an enclave of non-Hamas self-rule, You have an opportunity to introduce supply lines of food and aid, and an environment in which people are safe both from Hamas and from Israeli rocket and other fire, because those are designated and understood to be no longer posing a threat to Israel, while at the same time challenging Hamas by simply building up an alternative. So there's enormous Gazan support for this approach, we see these efforts beginning to bear fruit. That's the trend that we see, and as the word spreads that they are increasingly viable, more and more Gazans want to move into the safety of those areas.
Can you say how many of these areas, without specifying where, because you emphasize the discrete nature of these, can you say how many of these areas are currently operating inside the Gaza Strip?
I don't think that the number of areas, and there would be sensitivities to putting a number to them, is as relevant as the fact that there is a small number of pilot initiatives to this effect that range from a neighborhood or two to a larger expanse of territory held by a proper militia, or the beginnings of one. I think they lack for international support. Now, some people say, well, this, needs not to be in lieu of a larger concerted plan to bring alternative self-rule to the whole of Gaza. Obviously, efforts to get there have stalled for a range of political, military, and logistical reasons. But in the meantime, no one should, except for Hamas, should feel threatened by the prospect of these enclaves. They may eventually become the core building blocks of a larger settlement, but in the meantime, they're better than nothing. From a humanitarian level, they're a start, and it's important to give them a chance to develop, regardless of your vision of the ultimate outcome of this war.
All right, Joseph Braude, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. Really fascinating to hear your perspective and obviously to see this video. And I'm sure that we'll be having you back on soon again with continued updates from those you have in contact with on the ground in Gaza.